We would like to welcome everybody to our first, and hopefully many, many more, Shomrim appreciation events. We would like to begin with our Torah, something from our Torah. It's our guide and lesson book. So before we start our event, I'll just say something that ties Shomrim to the weekly Torah portion. One of the themes of this week's and last week's Torah portion is consistency. Last week, the Torah taught us about the daily sacrifices that were brought each day in the temple or in the tabernacle each morning and each afternoon. It's called the carbon tamid, the daily sacrifice. This week's parsha talks about another type of tamid, an eish tamid, an eternal fire, an eternal and consistent fire that burned on the altar, and as the verse said, it should never go out. It should stay on always. In the introduction to the Ein Yaakov, a 16th century compilation of various commentary on the Talmud, he brings an interesting medrash. Our sages of blessed memory had a debate. What's new? A couple of Jews having a debate. What they were debating, what is the most fundamental verse in the Torah? One of the sages said, Shema Yisrael is the most fundamental verse in the Torah. Talks about the oneness of God, monotheism, very spiritual. The second one said, no, loving your fellow as yourself, that is the most fundamental verse. When people have love for one another, it's going to lead for a more productive society. The third one said, no, when you focus and you dwell on the verse that talks about that each human being was created in the image of God, there will be more respect between human beings, and we'll be able to live in love and brotherhood and camaraderie one with the other. And then Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, he gets up and he says something quite astonishing. He says the most fundamental verse in all of the Bible is from last week's portion. It talks about the daily sacrifices, that every morning they would bring a sacrifice in the morning and one in the afternoon. That is the most fundamental aspect of the verse in the entire Torah. And the question is, how could that be? We're talking about the oneness of God and godliness. We're talking about loving your fellow, the image of that every single human being is created in the image of God. We're talking about very, very integral concepts. And here he's saying that the most fundamental verse is the daily sacrifice. And what's even more puzzling is that after they all deliberated and argued back and forth, this must have taken many weeks and many months, they came to the unanimous conclusion that he is right. The most fundamental verse in the Bible is the daily sacrifice, consistency. The Maharal of Prague, a 16th century sage and mystic, explains that when you have consistency, when someone's consistent in his divine service, and he betters himself, he constantly works, he or she, to evolve, to progress, and to move on in their lives, the way they relate to God, to their fellow human being, and to be a better friend, and to be a better neighbor. And when someone puts in consistent work every morning and every afternoon, and they go at it again and again, eventually they will find oneness of God. Eventually they will find love and respect for their friends and neighbors and other people from all over the world. Eventually they will learn to appreciate the image of God that exists within every single human being. And that is the message of consistency. I would like to say that Shomrim at large, and Crown Heights Shomrim in particular, embodies that consistency 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Rain or shine, hot or cold, we will always be there. And we will be that fire on the altar to bring some warmth and light to a situation which is otherwise chaotic and difficult. At the end of Tractate Chagiga, it's one of the tractates of the Talmud, there's a commentary of the Tosfos that they bring an interesting teaching from a medrash. There are two types of fires, they say. There's a heavenly fire and there's an earthly fire. There's a godly fire, like the fire of the burning bush that Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came to the burning bush, he saw the bush was on fire, but it wasn't consumed. And then there's an earthly fire, a fire that we know, a fire that burns, devours, and consumes. And if God forbid we don't harness fire correctly, it can have devastating consequences. I'd like to say that Shomrim is a slice of the heavenly fire. It burns, but it doesn't consume. It burns, but it doesn't devour. It burns with light, with warmth, with compassion, comfort, to difficult situations. It's a constant fire that will continue to be a beacon of light in Crown Heights. And we thank everybody in this room in some way, shape, or form are a part of this and make it happen.